So let's move on to our third topic. So we have OpenStack Gets Rescued by the Linux Foundation. Now, you guys may have heard recently or read recently that OpenStack, this was, I think, actually in March, the announcement was made. OpenStack is now part of the Linux Foundation. So that whole sort of Open Infra Foundation, as it's now called. It was before it was called the OpenStack Foundation. So the Open Infrastructure or Open Infra Foundation is now has been adopted by the Linux Foundation. Now, I can tell you that between Open Infra and OpenStack and the CNCF, there's no love lost between those two. There has been some clashes around those two in the past because they both offer when it comes to cloud infrastructure, if you want to call it that, they offer some very similar, type of solutions, really. So OpenStack, obviously, being the, kind of the cloud operating system. There's been a number of those from the past as well. We've had a couple of other types of solutions that are kind of quite similar. We'll try and include maybe some details on those in the description of the video. But I just kind of wanted to focus on this because I think this is kind of really the final humiliation for OpenStack because it was back in 2015, 2016, the project, which was originally developed by Rackspace and NASA, mainly by Rackspace to kind of please NASA in terms of what they wanted, which was like a cloud operating system. That was kind of at the height of 2016, 2017 was probably the height of the OpenStack. But then around that time, Kubernetes happened, and then the CNCF was formed, around that, and then obviously the CNCF landscape grew, and that really kind of not only dwarfed, but then really kind of diminished the use of OpenStack. So OpenStack sort of retreated into the telco space, where it's actually been quite strong in that space. But again, obviously that space is quite a limited space. Not everybody's a telco, and that's kind of really made it quite difficult to maintain the development of OpenStack. We've seen a lot of false dawns around that as well. So as I said earlier, SUSE dropped its distribution of OpenStack a number of years ago, shortly after trying to integrate their acquisition of HP Helion, which was HP's version of OpenStack. And then we've had more recently those who have still remained in the OpenStack camp, so like some Red Hat, Mirantis, Canonical, who normally does Ubuntu, and maybe some other ones as well, what they've done is they've taken the OpenStack modules, the components, the software components that actually make up the OpenStack sort of platform. I won't bother trying to remember the names. I'll maybe drop those in the description of the video for you. What they've done is they've taken those modules and put them on top of Kubernetes to run as containers. So now you have, so if we pretend this is on bare metal, not in a public cloud or a hyper-converged environment, you just have a server and then you drop a distribution of Kubernetes on top of it. So install it on the bare metal, let's say it's Red Hat's OpenShift. Now you can run OpenStack's modules as containers on top of OpenShift, which, as I said, is a Kubernetes distribution. And then you can create a logical cloud in that OpenStack layer, and then you can run your applications on top of that as virtual machines. And there's other intricate layers before you get to do that, but I'll just kind of maybe pause there. Is that making sense to you, Paul, at all?
Well, I always said you were going to lead on this one because to me it was, the whole debate around it appeared very arcane. So yeah, it made so the thing that you've just talked about that makes absolute sense is this layering one on top of another to make it work.
Yeah,
And yeah, I suppose I came at the announcement from a fairly different perspective as I normally do, because I'm not particularly technical. I don't understand the intricacies of OpenStack versus CNCF and all those.
yeah,
I've got a different CNCF story for another time.
yeah,
But the issue, is if all you're doing is doing more and more virtualized layers, this is a crazy way to go, surely.
exactly.
Absolutely a crazy way to go. Yeah, and yes, from a performance point of view, from a supportability point of view, you're just creating more areas where you're going to run problems. So I looked at it and thought, what's the reasoning behind them getting
Yeah,
together, other than, getting together? Because normally when people do this, they've either got some functionality that they want to get hold of, from the other party, and incorporate into what they do. Sometimes, rarely, but you do get ones where they just want to kill it, and I've
yeah,
seen that happen.
yeah,
Here, I was trying to work out what it was because there's no, I mean, I don't know the Linux Foundation well enough to say, is there a sort of drive in there that says, actually, it would be really good to get hold of these OpenStack capabilities to start to merge it. And therefore, you would go through a process that says, what do I need to take from what we've now got hold of? And maybe, maybe that's the wrong terminology, given that we're talking about open source and a much more, supposedly collaborative type environment. But it sort of struck me that says, I don't know why they've done it, because all they've done is created, a far wider product set, if I can call it that,
mm,
with no plan as to how you might want to, merge the two into something sensible.
exactly. I don't know because um, OpenStack was touted as, like I said, as a cloud operating system. So, drop a whole bunch of servers down, put OpenStack on top of them, and they'll effectively act as a
Mm,
supercomputer, as a kind of
mm,
a super virtualization in a hypervisor or whatever. Um, and that concept has gone away. Really, we've kind of moved away from that concept. And if you really want to do that today, you ought to do it with something rock solid, like as much as I'd hate to admit it, Red Hat's OpenShift or any Kubernetes distribution. So you do it as a containerization thing. And as one of my customers is doing exactly right now as we speak, they're using KubeVirt to bring in their old VMware vSphere virtual machines to run them in KubeVirt, right? And they run them side by side on their chosen Kubernetes distribution, which will remain nameless, um, next to their containers, next to their containerized applications. So that's what they're doing, for example, to move forward, right? But you don't go and, like HPE's we just talked about doing, by introducing OpenStack as another hypervisor. Nobody wants that. Yeah, as we just said, it's retreated into the telcos, and even the telcos, and this is where I think the spatters between CNCF and the Open Infra Foundation is that the telcos are looking to containerize all those services that OpenStack used to offer, which were specific to their market. So things like the network function virtualization and some of the more later or latest terminology and services around that. So all of those, because of the advent of Kubernetes, as we said, everybody's moved towards that. So we don't want to run, or certainly the telcos would like to leave the OpenStack space, I think, and run in a containerized environment. And even the public cloud providers have made them available in that way as well. So AWS announced, I don't know how long it was ago now, some time ago now, they're now offering those telco services, those capabilities in AWS public cloud to run as containers. So you can come into the AWS cloud and run your telco cloud essentially, using those containers.
And I'm sure, the people that run telcos, are not daft. They've been looking at the
Exactly.
configuration and saying, actually, there's probably no forward path for OpenStack. And if we're going to compete with AWS, if we're not going to have AWS completely eat our lunch, we need to be doing something very different that we can move forward with at pace. And
Yeah.
that wasn't OpenStack,
Yeah.
and therefore, it's. I did say when it happened, it was, I didn't want to say give it a decent burial, but it was sort of it's a bit what it felt like.
Yeah. Yeah. So the OpenStack, or the Open Infra Foundation, also has some side or other separate projects apart from the core project. So Kata containers, which is kind of building more secure based containers, Airship, which is a SDLC or software development lifecycle kind of management tool, Zool, which is a CI/CD platform, Starling X, which is an edge computing platforms. So there's a whole bunch of those. Okay, so maybe the LXF kind of wants to have those and maybe move those over to the CNCF at some point. But again, it's not like the CNCF landscape is short of those types of things. I'm trying to figure out some of the overlap that's actually available, or that's visible right now in the CNCF landscape, because a lot of their projects are doing some things that are extremely similar to each other, especially in that we can address any cloud environment from public to private for you, to build your cloud infrastructure. So the likes of OpenTofu and Crossplane and a number of others are very, very similar in terms of some of the things that they're actually doing.
So the danger is that the Linux Foundation is that they're going to get caught in some tremendous crossfire and some holy wars, I think is probably the only way to describe it, between.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
It's without any sort of structure that says how, what's the way in which we're going to streamline the offerings. It will be a bun fight between the various supporters of the two sides, and you think, interesting move, guys.
Yeah. So we've seen, all I've seen really from the OpenStack sort of camp since the time when Kubernetes was. And remember, I have been a very close experience with all of this, having experienced it at both SUSE and then at Mirantis as well. So I kind of lived it and breathed it through those vendors when I worked for them. I've just seen really OpenStack retreat. There's been more retreats every single time, and I thought now you can run your OpenStack services on top of Kubernetes and containers on top of Kubernetes was kind of the final straw. But actually, LXF managed to surprise me the Linux Foundation managed to surprise me by this recent announcement from March, by actually adopting the Open Infra Foundation, which administers OpenStack, or bringing it into the fold as well. So there's a distinction between LXF projects and CNCF projects, but nevertheless, both are under the same umbrella.
If you could ever get, the senior leadership in, maybe somebody from Linux Foundation or whoever, or maybe have a sort of three-way debate, but with senior level people. To get an understanding of why they did this. That's the thing. Why did you do it?
Yeah, the why is still, I think,
because
I'm still stuck on the why. I have to say.
Because we can't work out how they're going to manage it if they haven't got a clear reason why they did it.
Yeah, exactly. And then what is the impact of that? And if it's just funding, and then kind of the Open Infra Foundation was kind of crying to the Linux Foundation, I wouldn't be surprised, because like I said, OpenStack at its height used to have 2 conferences a year. now who has two conferences a year? The CNCF, right? So those two conferences, got killed off many years ago. They became local events, and I don't even know if those local events are still running for OpenStack these days. So, like I said, the vendors have all shifted gears. Some of them have dropped out, like the likes of SUSE. The others have all converted the way that you run OpenStack services. That to me just kind of gets it into long-term support mode. That's what I got the impression of when you're saying, the likes of Red Hat and Canonical and Maranta say, oh, now you can run your OpenStack services on top of our Kubernetes distributions. That to me sounds like you're going into long-term support. So the product's being deprecated. You're not going to sell it. You're not going to act proactively, be marketing it. But for those customers who we still have, you can that'll be your next version, and that also quite nicely segues that customer into our existing product, our Kubernetes solution as well. So yeah, but so all of that is kind of where I'm seeing it. If you guys want to hear a lot more about OpenStack, I did a talk with Leo Stehlik, my friend Leo Stehlik, called Is OpenStack Dead? So have a look at that. I'll again include the link to that video in the description. So by all means, have a look at that. We go into a lot more detail about OpenStack, and Leo kind of explains about his experience with it as well. But just going back to what you said, and you hit on a very important point about the layers of management and the upkeep and the maintenance that you have to do. So as we said, if we put, let's say, Red Hat OpenShift on top of bare metal, keep it nice and simple, and then we run the OpenStack services on top of that OpenShift, which, as we said, is a Kubernetes distribution or can have Kubernetes capabilities. Then OpenStack creates as we said, that kind of logical cloud environment. But that cloud environment doesn't have anything in it. In order to run your applications, you need to run a virtualization platform or a container platform on top of it. In most cases, it'll be a virtualization platform. So then you have to run something like KVM on top of that, which is an open source hypervisor. Yeah. And then you run your applications. You create your VMs within KVM, and then you run your application on top of that. And I think that's the crazy complexity that you will have to do, even if you cut down on that by eliminating KVM somehow. And maybe there are some modules, and like I said, I've not kept up to date with all the OpenStack sort of, not the non-core services of OpenStack. Even if that's possible, why on earth would you want to introduce that extra layer of maintenance and upgrades and security and so on? It just doesn't make any sense.
And it only takes one developer or one operations guy to decide, actually, I need a new interface between these, I need to link them together slightly more tightly to the point where it's unsupportable in the future, because you've now effectively, if you're API driven and you've got very firm, sort of separation between the two environments. Yeah. We've seen in the past where, in order to make something perform, you sort of tweak something through that, so that it becomes so complex and so complicated. Not so much complex, it's they're all is that you can't support it. You can't upgrade it. You can't do anything to it.
Exactly.
So it just seems strange.
Very, 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 very strange. I mean, I guess we've kind of had a guess at some of the reasons why, but I still want to know the official kind of what was the decision-making process. Was it just simply money? Because the Open Infra Foundation has just run out of money and they just can't maintain it anymore.
They're going to have to go to one of these conferences where the senior folks are with a microphone in hand
and just stick it right in their face and ask for an interview.
Why the hell are you doing this?
Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.